The alarm screamed through every corridor of the ship. Captain Jiho ran toward the bridge, his boots hitting the metal floor hard. Around him, people were crying. Children held on to their parents. Everyone knew what the alarm meant. The ship was dying. The Perseverance carried 50,000 souls. All of them were the last hope from Station Omega, a place that no longer existed. Earth had sent them away with broken promises and older ships. Now, lost in empty space, their reactor was failing. Life support had maybe 3 days left. Maybe less. Jiho reached the bridge and looked at the screens. Nothing. Just empty black space and distant stars. No planets. No stations. No help. Captain, we sent every distress signal we have, said Hana, the chief medical officer. Her voice was calm, but her hands shook. No response? We're too far from any known route. Jiho closed his eyes. He was 32 years old. Too young to watch 50,000 people die in the cold of space. Too young to give up. He opened his eyes again. Keep trying, he said. Hours passed like years. The reactor temperature kept climbing. Engineers worked until their fingers bled, but nothing helped. The ship was too old, too damaged from the journey. One by one, systems began to fail. First the hot water, then the lights in the lower decks, then the heat. On the second day, when hope was almost gone, something appeared on the sensors. Captain, ship approaching. The sensor officer jumped from his seat. It's big. Really big. Everyone held their breath. Pirates existed in deep space. So did worse things. Jiho watched the screen as the unknown ship came closer. It was massive, covered in strange symbols that glowed with soft blue light. The design was nothing like human ships. It looked like someone had grown it instead of building it. They're scanning us, Hana whispered. A voice came through the speakers. It sounded like wind through trees, but the translator worked. Human vessel. We are Velran. We detect critical failure in your systems. Do you require assistance? Jiho couldn't speak for a moment. Help. Actual help. He grabbed a communication device. Yes. Yes, please. We have 50,000 people. Families. Children. Our reactor is failing. We need help. Silence. Long, terrible silence. Jiho wondered if they would just leave. Why would aliens help humans? Humans had only left Earth 20 years ago. Nobody knew them. Nobody owed them anything. We are coming to help, the voice said finally. Prepare to receive our engineers. The Velran ship moved beside the Perseverance like a giant protecting a child. Airlocks connected. The first Velran who came aboard was tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that looked like smooth stone. His name was Keth. Show me your reactor, Keth said through the translator. For 16 hours, Keth and his team worked. They brought equipment that humans had never seen before. They moved through the dangerous reactor room without fear. Twice, Keth nearly died from radiation exposure, but he kept working. Hana tried to help, bringing medical supplies. She watched Keth work with tools that bent light and machines that sang. When she offered him water, he looked at her with eyes that had no whites, just deep purple color. Why are you helping us? She asked quietly. You don't know us. Keth was quiet for a moment, his forearms still moving over the reactor controls. My people have traveled the stars for 10,000 years, he said. We have seen many species rise and fall. We have learned that kindness costs nothing but means everything. If we can help, we should help. It is that simple. But your council must have rules. Laws about helping primitive species. They do. They warned us about humans. Called your kind volatile and dangerous. Keth made a sound that might have been a laugh. but I see only people who need help. That is enough. On the third day, the reactors stabilized. The lights came back on. Heat flowed through the corridors again. Children stopped crying. Parents held each other and wept with relief. The Valran gave more than repairs. They gave the Perseverance coordinates to a habitable world, 3 months away. They gave supplies. They gave star maps. They asked for nothing in return. Before they left, Jiho met with Keth and the Valran Elder, a being named Orin who looked ancient beyond measure. "I don't know how to thank you," Jiho said. His voice broke. "You saved us. All of us. I promise you, humanity will never forget this. We will remember. If you ever need us, we will come. No matter what. No matter where." Orin's old eyes studied Jiho for a long moment. "Survive," Orin said simply. "Build your colony. Raise your children. Live well. That is payment enough. The galaxy needs more kindness, not more debts." But Jiho shook his head. "This is not a debt. This is a promise. Humanity remembers every favor, always." The Valran ships departed, their blue lights fading into the black. The Perseverance continued toward hope, toward a new world. In his quarters, Jiho recorded everything in the ship's permanent log. Every detail, every name, every word. His hands moved over the controls as he finished the entry. Today the Valran saved humanity. They asked for nothing. We will give them everything if they ever need it. This I swear on every life aboard this ship. We remember. Outside, the stars watched in silence. The universe did not care about promises. But humans did. And that would change everything. 80 years had changed everything. Admiral Taiyang stood on the bridge of the war vessel Unity's Hammer, watching the construction yards below. Dozens of ships were being built, each one bristling with weapons that would have seemed like magic to his grandfather. The colony that the Perseverance had founded was now a thriving world called New Haven. From that one desperate ship, humanity had grown into a confederation of 12 worlds and over 2 billion people. Taiyang touched the old metal on his uniform. It had belonged to Captain Jiho, his grandfather, who died 20 years ago. The old man had told him stories about the Valran until his last breath. "Never forget who helped us when we had nothing," Jiho had said. "Never forget." "Admiral, Ambassador Minji is here to see you," said his first officer. Minji entered the bridge with her usual confident stride. She was one of humanity's best diplomats, someone who had made friends across 40 different species. Her job was to keep humanity safe through words instead of weapons. "Taiyang, we have a problem," she said, skipping all greetings. "The Valran." Taiyang felt his chest tighten. "What about them?" Minji pulled up a holographic display. It showed star maps and fleet movements. Red marks indicated military forces, all surrounding Valran space. "The Kryn Empire has given them an ultimatum. Submit to imperial rule or face invasion. The Valran have 2 weeks to decide." The Kryn Empire. Taiyang knew about them. Everyone did. They were one of the largest military powers in the galaxy, controlling over 300 systems. They expanded through conquest and force, crushing any species too weak to resist. They had been growing for centuries, and nobody seemed able to stop them. "What is the Galactic Council doing?" Taiyang asked. Minji's face showed disgust. "Nothing." They held a vote. The council decided the Valran are not strategically important enough to defend. The major powers don't want a war with the Kryn over some merchant species. Merchant species? Taiyang's voice rose. The Valran have been helping other races for thousands of years. I know, Minji interrupted. I voted to intervene. I argued for 3 hours. They don't care. The Valran have no military. No weapons. No allies powerful enough to matter. The council has written them off. Taiyang turned to look at the construction yards again. Humanity had spent 80 years building something. Not just ships and weapons, but a reputation. Humans kept their promises. Humans remembered their friends. Humans paid their debts. Grandfather made a promise, Taiyang said quietly. Your grandfather has been dead for 20 years. Nobody expects. I expect it. Taiyang cut her off. Show me the recording. The one from the Perseverance. Minji sighed but pulled up the file. Every human child learned about it in school, but seeing it again still made Taiyang's throat tight. There was young Captain Jiho standing in front of the well-run Elder Arin. His voice was clear and strong. Humanity will never forget this. We will remember. If you ever need us, we will come. No matter what. No matter where. The recording ended. Taiyang looked at Minji. Get me the Confederation Council. Emergency session. Now. 6 hours later, Taiyang stood before the human leadership. Presidents, prime ministers, corporate leaders, colony governors. All of them appeared as holograms around the circular chamber. Some looked interested. Many looked annoyed at being pulled from their schedules. This is about the Velrun situation, said President Deho of New Haven. We have already discussed this. It's tragic, but not our problem. It is exactly our problem, Taiyang said. He pulled up the old recording for everyone to see. Some had seen it before. Some hadn't. All of them watched in silence as Jiho made his promise. 80 years ago, we were dying, Taiyang continued. 50,000 humans, lost in space, waiting to freeze to death in the dark. The Velrun saved us. Not because we could pay them. Not because we offered them anything. They saved us because it was right. And my grandfather promised we would remember. That was 80 years ago, said Governor Isial from the mining colonies. Times have changed. The Kryn Empire has 500 warships. We have 40. It's suicide. Then we build more, Taiyang said simply. It would take months. The Velrun have 2 weeks. Then we fight with what we have. The chamber erupted in argument. Voices shouted over each other. Some said it was noble but stupid. Some said humanity couldn't afford to make enemies of the Kryn. Some said the Velrun would understand if humans didn't help. Minji stood up, silencing the room. I have spoken with 70 different species in my career, she said. I have made trade deals, peace treaties, and alliances. Do you know what everyone says about humanity? They say we are fierce traders, tough negotiators, unpredictable fighters. But they also say we keep our word, always, even when it costs us. She looked around the chamber. If we abandon the Velrun now, we lose that reputation. Every promise we ever make becomes worthless. Every alliance becomes suspect. We become just another species that forgets where it came from. President Deho was quiet for a long moment. If we do this, we might lose. The Kryn could destroy us. Yes, Taiyang agreed. But if we don't do this, we destroy ourselves. We become something worse than dead. We become the kind of species that forgets who helped us. The vote took hours. Arguments went back and forth. Some threatened to withdraw their fleets. Some promised to send everything they had. In the end, the vote passed by a narrow margin. Humanity would mobilize. Taiyang returned to his ship and began issuing orders. 40 warships would become a fleet. Every shipyard would work around the clock. Every weapon would be loaded. Every crew would be ready. He sent a message to the Velrun homeworld. It was simple and short. This is Admiral Taiyang of the Human Confederation. 80 years ago, you saved us. Captain Jiho promised we would remember. We do. We are coming. Hold on. The response came 6 hours later. It was from someone named Keth, the same Keth who had saved the Perseverance all those years ago. He was old now, his voice weak through the translator. "You remember," Keth said, and Tiang could hear the wonder in his voice. "After all this time, you actually remember." "Always," Tiang replied. "Humanity never forgets." Across human space, ships began to move. Crews said goodbye to families. Weapons were loaded. Engines were tested. The galaxy was about to learn something important. Humanity remembered every favor, and their gratitude was as fierce as their anger. The Kryn invasion fleet arrived in Velrun space like a storm made of metal and fire. 300 ships, each one massive and covered in weapons. They moved in perfect formation, confident and unstoppable. They had crushed 40 species before the Velrun. This would be no different. General Vexer commanded the fleet from his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was a decorated warrior who had never lost a battle. The Velrun would surrender within hours, he was certain. They always did. Weak merchant species always surrendered. "General, we are detecting ships approaching," said his sensor officer. Vexer looked at the display without concern. "Velrun vessels?" "No, sir. Unknown configuration. Transponders identify them as human." Vexer laughed. Humans. The primitive species that had barely left their home system a century ago. He had read the reports. Humans had some warships now, built from purchased alien technology. Nothing impressive. How many ships? 42, sir. 42 ships against 300. Vexer almost felt sorry for them. Almost. "Open a channel to them," he ordered. The human fleet stopped at the edge of Velrun space. Their ships were smaller than Kryn vessels, but they moved with precision. At their head was a ship called Unity's Hammer. Its commander appeared on the screen. "I am Fleet Commander Diane of the Human Confederation," the human said. His face was young, but his eyes were hard. "You are ordered to withdraw from Velrun space immediately." Vexer smiled. "Oh, what, human? Your tiny fleet against the might of the Empire? This is amusing." "This is your only warning," Doyam replied. "Leave now, peacefully. The Velrun are weak. They have no military, no defenses, no allies who matter." Vexer leaned forward. "Tell me, human, why would you die for them? What did they promise you? Money? Technology? It cannot be worth your lives." Diane was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but clear. 80 years ago, when humanity had nothing, the Velrun saved us. They asked for nothing in return. They just helped because it was right. Now you ask why we fight? Doyen's expression hardened. Because some things matter more than survival. Like keeping promises. Like protecting those who protected us. How noble? Vexer mocked. And how stupid. This is your last chance. Leave or be destroyed with the Velrun. We gave you a chance too, Doyen said. You should have taken it. The channel closed. Vexer shook his head. Humans were fools. Brave fools, perhaps, but still fools. All ships, attack formation. Destroy the human fleet. Make it quick. The Kryn fleet moved forward. 300 ships against 42. It should have been over in minutes, it wasn't. The human ships scattered in patterns that made no sense to Kryn tactics. They moved too fast, changed direction too quickly. Kryn weapons fired, but the humans seemed to know where the shots would be before they happened. What are they doing? Vexer demanded. They're using some kind of predictive algorithm, sir. They're calculating our firing patterns. Then the humans fired back. Their weapons were different from anything Vexer had seen. Missiles that split into dozens of smaller missiles. Beam weapons that curved around shields. Kinetic weapons that tore through armor like paper. One Kryn ship exploded. Then another. Then 5 more. Impossible, Vexer shouted. They're primitives. How? Sir, they're targeting our shield generators specifically. They know exactly where to hit. Aboard the Unity's hammer, Doyon watched the battle with cold calculation. Humanity had spent 80 years studying every conflict, every war, every battle tactic from dozens of species. They had learned from all of them and created something new. Something the galaxy hadn't seen before. Target their flagship's port side, Section 7, Doyon ordered. Engineer Yuna, prepare the EMP burst. Yuna's hands moved across her controls. She was a genius who had designed weapons specifically for this fight. Weapons that the Kryn would never expect. EMP ready, sir. Fire. The electromagnetic pulse hit the Eternal Dominion like an invisible hammer. Every shield on the massive ship went dark. Every electronic system failed for 3 precious seconds. 3 seconds was enough. 20. Human missiles struck the flagship. The Eternal Dominion shook as explosions tore through its hull. Vexer was thrown from his chair, alarms screaming all around him. Damage report, he shouted. Shield generators offline. Hull breaches on 15 decks. Engines at 40%. Vexer stared at the display in disbelief. His fleet was falling apart. 30 ships destroyed. 50 more damaged. The humans were fighting like demons, like they had been born for war. How are they doing this? They're supposed to be merchants and diplomats. An old Kryn warrior on the bridge spoke quietly. Perhaps they learned from necessity, sir. From being refugees who had to survive. Vexer understood then. These weren't the desperate refugees from 80 years ago. These were the children and grandchildren of those refugees. People who remembered what it meant to have nothing. People who understood that everything could be lost in a moment. People who would fight like the universe itself was trying to kill them. Because once it had been. On the surface of the Velron homeworld, Keth watched the battle through observation screens. Around him, millions of Velron watched in stunned silence. Human ships danced through space, protecting Velron civilian vessels as they evacuated. Protecting them with their own bodies, their own lives. They came, Keth whispered. They actually came. A younger Velron beside him was crying. Why would they do this? They barely know us. Keth thought back to that day 80 years ago. To the dying human ship. To the desperate captain who made a promise. To Oren's words about kindness costing nothing but meaning everything. Because they are human? Keth said simply. And humans remember. In space, Doyon opened a channel to all Kryn forces. His ship was damaged, his fleet battered. But they were winning. Kryn forces, this is your final warning. The Velron are under human protection. You have 2 choices. Withdraw now, or we will destroy every ship you have. Humanity remembers every favor, every kindness, every act of mercy shown to us. The Velron saved us when we had nothing. Now we will pay that debt with your ships, if we must. He paused, letting the words sink in. Leave now. Or learn why the galaxy should fear our gratitude. Vexer looked at his shattered fleet. At the burning wrecks floating in space. At the human ships that still fought with terrifying efficiency. He had lost 1/3 of his force to a fleet 1/7 his size. Pride told him to fight. Experience told him to run. For the first time in his life, Vexer chose wisdom over pride. All ships retreat. Full speed. The Kryn fleet turned and ran, leaving their dead behind. The humans didn't pursue. They simply held their position, guarding the Velron homeworld like patient sentinels. Across the galaxy, other species watched the recordings of the battle in shock. Humans had just fought the Kryn Empire and won. The primitive species that everyone had dismissed had just changed the balance of power. But more than that, they had done it for a promise made 80 years ago by a desperate captain on a dying ship. The echo of that promise had just thundered across the stars. The Kryn Emperor Talvax sat on his throne of black metal and stared at the reports. His hands gripped the armrest so hard that his claws carved grooves into the ancient material. Around him, his advisors stood in terrified silence. "Defeated," Talvax said, his voice like grinding stone. "General Vexer was defeated by humans. By primitives who have been in space for barely a century. Your Majesty, the humans fought with unexpected tactics," one advisor dared to speak. "They have studied warfare extensively." Silence. Talvax rose from his throne. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in ceremonial armor that had been worn by emperors for 1,000 years. "I do not care about their tactics. I care about the insult, the humiliation. The Empire has crushed hundreds of species. We will not be stopped by humans." He turned to his military commanders. "Assemble the main battle fleet. 80% of our total forces. We will erase humanity from the stars. We will burn their worlds. We will make such an example of them that no species will ever dare challenge us again." The advisors looked at each other nervously. 80% of the fleet meant pulling ships from everywhere, leaving borders undefended, risking everything on a single battle. "Your Majesty," an old advisor said carefully, "is that wise? The humans may have allies. The Galactic Council might. The Council are cowards who do nothing but talk," Talvax interrupted. "By the time they finish debating, humanity will be ash. Prepare the fleet. We leave in 3 days." Across the galaxy, every species watched and waited. The Kryn were mobilizing the largest fleet ever assembled. 500 warships. Enough to destroy entire civilizations. They were bringing judgment down on humanity. Some species felt sympathy for the humans. Most felt relief that they weren't the target. On New Haven, Admiral Taiyang read the intelligence reports with a grim expression. The Kryn were coming with everything they had. 500 ships against humanity's remaining 38 vessels. Many had been damaged in the first battle. Some were still being repaired. "We can't win this," said President Deho. His hologram flickered in Taiyang's office. "We should evacuate. Save who we can." "No," Taiyang said quietly. "We fight. With what? We're outnumbered more than 10 to 1. With everything we have. With everything we are." Taiyang looked at the medal on his desk, the one that belonged to his grandfather. "We promised the Voron we would protect them. We keep our promises. Even if it kills us." Minji entered the office, and for the first time Taiyang could remember, she was smiling. "I have news," she said. "Remember all those species I've been talking to for years? All those diplomatic relationships we've built? They're responding." She pulled up a star map. Dozens of ships from different species were moving toward Velran space. Not huge fleets, but something. The Dervani sent 3 ships. The Quellan sent 5. The Rothani sent 7. Species that humanity had helped with trade deals, with technology sharing, with simple kindness. "They're coming," Minji said. "Not because they're required to, because they want to. Because they've watched humans keep every promise they ever made, and they trust us." Taiyang felt hope for the first time in days. "How many total?" 43 ships from 12 different species. Combined with our fleet, we'll have 81 ships. Still outnumbered more than 6 to 1. But it was something. Captain Sora received her orders 3 days before the Kryn fleet arrived. She commanded the stealth ship Silent Arrow, designed for operations behind enemy lines. Her mission was simple and nearly impossible. Sabotage their supply lines, Taiyang had told her. Make them bleed before they reach us. Sora and her crew slipped into Kryn space like ghosts. They found supply depots, fuel stations, ammunition stores. One by one, they destroyed them. Not with weapons, but with clever sabotage. Reactors that would fail in 3 days. Fuel that was contaminated. Computer systems infected with viruses. They'll notice eventually, her first officer said. By then it will be too late, Sora replied. She was right. When the Kryn fleet reached Velrun space, they were already struggling. Ships running low on fuel. Weapons systems malfunctioning. Supply ships that exploded for no apparent reason. Emperor Talvax didn't care. He still had 500 ships. More than enough to crush the defenders. The human fleet waited for them in orbit around the Velrun homeworld. 81 ships formed a defensive line. Behind them, millions of Velrun civilians sheltered in underground bunkers. If the humans failed, those civilians would die. Taiyang stood on the bridge of Unity's hammer, watching the Kryn fleet approach like a metal wall. Beside him was Hyan, a strategic genius who had planned every detail of the defense. They'll try to break our line with overwhelming force, Hyan said quietly. Standard Kryn tactic. Concentrate firepower on a single point. Then, we don't give them a single point, Taiyang replied. The battle began with thunder and fire. Kryn ships fired everything they had. The Allied fleet scattered into small groups, each one supporting the others. When the Kryn focused on one group, another would strike from behind. When they split their forces, the Allies would reunite and crush a single wing. Hyan had studied every battle the Kryn had ever fought. He knew their tactics, their patterns, their arrogance. He used it all against them, but even with perfect tactics, the numbers were terrible. One by one, Allied ships fell. The Darvani lost 2 ships protecting a wounded human cruiser. The Quellans sacrificed one of their vessels to save Velrun evacuation transports. Taeyang watched it all with a breaking heart. These species were dying for a promise they didn't make, for a debt they didn't owe. Sir, Kryn flagship is moving to firing position, his tactical officer reported. They're targeting the Velrun capital city. If that shot hits, I know, Taiyang interrupted. Millions would die. The bunkers wouldn't protect them from that kind of weapon. He looked at his crew. Young people. People with families. People with futures. Move us between the flagship and the planet, he ordered. The bridge went silent. Everyone understood what that meant. The Unity's hammer would take the shot meant for the city. The ship and everyone on it would die. Sir, someone started. Now, Taiyang shouted. The Unity's hammer moved into position just as the Kryn flagship fired. The massive energy beam hit the ship's bow, tearing through shields and armor. Explosions ripped through every deck. People screamed. Metal shrieked. But the beam didn't reach the planet. Taiyang was thrown against a wall. Blood ran from a cut on his head. Around him, the bridge was chaos. But they were alive. Somehow, impossibly, they were still alive. Damage report. He gasped. Forward sections destroyed. Shields at 3%. Weapons offline. We're dead in space, sir. But the planet? Undamaged. We blocked the shot. Across the fleet, humans and aliens alike watched the Unity's hammer burn in space. Watched it sacrifice itself to save civilians it had never met. Something changed in that moment. The other species stopped fighting cautiously. They fought like humans, fierce, desperate, willing to die for something bigger than themselves. The Kryn began to break. Ships that had fought for the Empire for decades suddenly retreated. Their crews had seen enough. They had watched a species willingly die to protect others. It broke something in them. Emperor Talvax watched his fleet crumble with disbelief. Retreat? They're retreating? I will execute every captain who, Your Majesty, his chief advisor interrupted. The fleet is breaking. If we stay, we will lose everything. Talvax wanted to rage, wanted to fight until the last ship burned. But he was an emperor, not a fool. If he lost the entire fleet, his enemies within the empire would tear him apart. All ships withdraw, he said, each word bitter as poison. The Kryn fleet turned and ran. This time, they wouldn't be back. The Unity's hammer floated dead in space, its hull torn open to the stars. But emergency shuttles were arriving. The crew was being evacuated. Taiyang was pulled from the bridge on a stretcher, barely conscious. Below on the Volrun homeworld, millions emerged from bunkers to see the wreckage above, to see the ships that had died protecting them. Keth stood on the surface, tears running down his face. Around him, Volrun of all ages wept openly. They had been saved, not by power or wealth or politics, by species who barely knew them but remembered kindness. Why? A young Volrun asked. Why would they die for us? Keth thought of that day 80 years ago, of a desperate captain making a promise, of his elder Orin saying kindness costs nothing but means everything. Because, Keth said softly, some species understand that we are all connected, that helping each other is not weakness. It is the only thing that makes us strong. In orbit, the Allied fleet gathered around the wounded Unity's hammer, protecting it, honoring it. Humanity had won. But more importantly, they had shown the galaxy what they truly were. Not conquerors, not merchants, not politicians, just people who kept their promises, no matter the cost. 5 years had changed everything. Again, Ambassador Minji stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, a place where she had once begged for help and been ignored. Now she stood at a different podium, the human podium. A permanent seat among the great powers of the galaxy. Around her sat representatives from hundreds of species. Some watched her with respect, some with fear. All of them listened when she spoke. The Covenant of Remembrance has been active for 5 years, Minji said, her voice calm and clear. In that time, 47 species have joined. Not through conquest, not through threats, through mutual agreement that we will help each other, that we will remember kindness, that we will stand together. She pulled up a display showing the Covenant's activities. Medical aid to the Rathani plague, defense support for the Davani border, technology sharing with the Quellan, food shipments to the Harvax during their famine. Some of you called this naive, Minji continued. Some said that power only respects power, that kindness is weakness, that the Covenant would collapse the moment we faced real danger. She smiled then, and it was not a gentle smile. The Kryn Empire learned differently. They sent 500 ships to teach us about power. They lost 300 ships and their emperor. The new Kryn leadership has requested to join the Covenant. We are still debating their application. A murmur went through the council. The Kryn, once the terror of the galaxy, now begging to join an alliance based on mutual aid and remembered kindness. This is the way forward, Minji said. Not through fear, not through domination, through remembering who helped us and helping others in turn, through understanding that we are stronger together than we could ever be alone. She sat down to silence. Then, slowly, applause began. Not from everyone, but from enough across the galaxy. On the merchant lanes between stars, a distress signal echoed through the void. It was desperate, frightened, transmitted in a language that human computers had never heard before. Captain Yunji was 3 days from New Haven when the signal reached her ship, the Promise Keeper. She was young for a captain, only 28, but she carried the blood of Captain Jiho in her veins. His great-great-granddaughter. Captain, we're detecting a disabled ship, her sensor officer reported. Unknown species. Looks like they've been attacked. Life support is failing. Yunji didn't hesitate. Change course. Full speed. Send a message that we're coming to help. Our first officer looked worried. Captain, we don't know this species. They could be dangerous. They could die if we don't help them, Yunji interrupted. Prepare medical teams and engineering support. Move. The ship they found was small and badly damaged. Hull breaches leaked the atmosphere into space. The reactor was barely functioning. It reminded Yunji of stories she had heard about the Perseverance, about her ancestor's ship dying in the void. The species called themselves the Torvins. They looked like nothing Yunji had seen before, covered in crystalline scales that refracted light into rainbows. There were only 200 of them on the ship. Refugees from a war they couldn't win, fleeing to find safety somewhere in the endless dark. Please, their captain transmitted, his voice breaking through the translator. We have children, elders. We cannot fix our ship. We are dying. Yunji's crew worked for 18 hours straight. They sealed hull breaches, repaired the reactor, shared their medical supplies and food. The Torvins watched in stunned confusion as these strangers saved their lives without asking for anything. When the repairs were complete, the Torvin captain met Yunji in the airlock. His name was Kelfern, and his eyes held both gratitude and confusion. Why? He asked simply. Why help us? You do not know us. We cannot pay you. We have nothing to offer. Yunji smiled, thinking of all the stories her father had told her. About Jiho and the Velrin. About Taiyang and the Promise. About humanity learning that kindness was not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. Someone once helped us when we had nothing, she said. My ancestor made a promise that day. To remember. To help others the way we were helped. You don't need to pay us. You just need to live. Build a new home. Raise your children. Be safe. She paused, remembering the words of Oren, the Velrin elder who her ancestor had met so long ago. And maybe someday, when you meet someone else who needs help, you'll remember us. You'll help them too. That's how it works. Kindness echoing through the stars. Kelfern was silent for a long moment. Then he bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect. We will remember, he said. The Torvins will never forget the humans who saved us. Good, Yunji replied. Then pass it on. On New Haven, in a garden built to honor those who had died in the Kryn War, two old friends sat in the sunshine. Hannah was over 100 years old now, her hair white as snow. Beside her sat Keth, the Velrin engineer who had saved the Perseverance a lifetime ago. He was ancient even by Velrin standards, his forearms moving slowly, but his mind was still sharp. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't helped your ship that day? Keth asked. Hannah was quiet, watching birds fly between memorial stones that bore the names of those who had died protecting the Velrin. Yes, she said finally. I wonder if humanity would have survived at all. We were so close to the edge. And now look at you. Keth gestured to the sky, where ships from a dozen species passed overhead. You changed the galaxy. We didn't do anything special, Hannah protested. We just remembered. We just kept our promises. Keth made a sound that might have been laughter. That is everything, Hannah. In a galaxy where species forget who helped them the moment it is convenient, where power is the only language most speak, you remembered. You taught others to remember. You taught us first, Hannah reminded him. You showed us that kindness was possible, that helping others was worth it. I saved one ship, Keth said softly. You saved an empire. Then you saved us. Then you saved dozens of others. The echo keeps growing. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky. In the distance, construction crews were building new ships. Not weapons, but medical ships, rescue vessels, transport ships to help species relocate or evacuate if needed. I'm dying, Hannah, Keth said suddenly. Velran physicians say I have perhaps a month left. Hannah took his hand gently. I'm sorry. Don't be. I am old, even for my kind. I have lived to see something beautiful. I saved a desperate ship full of refugees. Those refugees became a species that saved my entire people. And then they kept going, saving others, creating something the galaxy has never seen before. He looked at her with those deep purple eyes. I die knowing that the kindness we showed that day echoed across time and space. It touched billions of lives, all because we chose to help when we could have just kept flying. Do you regret it? Hannah asked. After everything that happened, the war, the death. No, Keth interrupted firmly. Never. The war happened because the Kryn were cruel and arrogant. But humanity won because they remembered what it meant to be kind, to stand for others. That is worth any price. Far above them, on the Promise Keeper, Yunji was writing a log entry. It was tradition in her family. Every captain wrote down the important moments, just like Jiho had done on the Perseverance all those years ago. Today we saved the Torvins, she wrote. 200 souls who would have died if we had kept to our schedule. They asked why we helped. I told them what my great-great-grandfather said, that someone once helped us, that we remember, that we pass it on. She paused, thinking about the chain of kindness that stretched back through time. The Velran saving humanity. Humanity saving the Velran. Together they saved others. Those others would save more. On and on, like ripples spreading across an infinite ocean. The galaxy thinks humanity's revenge against those who threaten us is our weapons or our tactics, she wrote. They're wrong. Our revenge against a cruel universe is simple. We refuse to become cruel ourselves. We remember every act of kindness. We honor every promise. We help everyone we can. She finished the entry with words that had become the unofficial motto of the Covenant. Humanity remembers every favor, and our gratitude resonates across the worlds. In the council chambers, on battlefields, in quiet gardens, and in the void between stars, the echo continued. Species that have been helped went on to help others. Promises were kept. Kindness was remembered. The Kryn had tried to teach the galaxy about power through fear and conquest. They had ruled for centuries with weapons and threats. Humanity taught a different lesson. That the strongest force in the universe wasn't weapons or numbers or empire. It was memory. It was gratitude. It was the simple act of helping someone because you remembered when you needed help. And that lesson echoed through the cosmos, changing everything it touched. Keth died 3 weeks later, surrounded by both Velran and humans. His last words were simple. I saved one ship. Look what they built from that single act. Kindness is never wasted. He was right. Across 47 worlds, species that had been saved by the Covenant were now saving others. The echo grew louder, spreading further, touching more lives. And somewhere in the vast dark between stars, another desperate ship sent out a distress signal. Another species faced extinction or suffering or hopelessness. And somewhere nearby, a ship of the Covenant changed course. Because they remembered. Because someone once helped them.